Hello my friends and welcome to today's video. I'm Jeanette with Vivo Vintage Designs. In today's video we're going to be painting pumpkins using watercolor, and I'm painting or drawing stacked pumpkins. And here I'm showing you just how easy it is to draw a pumpkin. All you have to do is draw 3 ovals, one on top of the other, smaller as you get to the top, and then within each shape just draw some curved lines and round them off at the bottom, as you see me doing here. And you can add as many or as little segments as you like. And if it makes it easier for you, you can also just draw an oval, yes, an oval, and then within the oval continue to add ovals so that you get the basic shape of the pumpkin, and then erase the lines that you don't need, as you see me doing here. Now, to go over the supplies I'll be using, I am using the Muño pan paints. This is a great set for the beginner. It's got 48 different colors and it's very inexpensive and it's pretty good quality paint. It's not professional quality, but it's wonderful to start with. And I am using my Daler Rowney mixed media paper, which is also great for the beginner because it makes blending so much easier. I will be using my silver black velvet brushes in a size 4 and a size 8. And to mix the paints, I'm using just an old brush because mixing the paints is very hard on the bristles of your brushes. And if you have good quality brushes, you don't want to ruin them, so use an old brush. So you can see here that I'm mixing a variety of oranges and yellows, and I'm adding a little bit of white to some of them just to soften the color a little bit. And I'm mixing a nice dark green. I'm adding a little purple to it to deepen the green, and then I'm mixing a lighter shade of green as well. And I'm going to be starting with my bottom pumpkin. And I'm mixing 2 of the yellow and the orange that you see on top there to create the base for my pumpkin. And I'm going to go ahead and fill in the entire pumpkin. And I'm using wet on dry. The paper is dry. I'm not pre-wetting the paper. Now, while the paper is wet with the paint that I just put down on it, I'm using a deeper shade of orange to create the lines for the segments of the pumpkin. And you can see here that I've gotten some blooms where I lifted the brush, but that's really simple to fix. All you have to do is use a clean, damp brush and run it along those lines, and you can pick up that paint. And here you can see I'm adding a darker shade of orange. I've actually mixed a little bit of brown into that darker shade of orange, and I've added the brown to the top of the bottom pumpkin to create the cast shadow from the pumpkin above it. And now I'm just using a clean, damp brush to soften those lines or to blend that color in. And now I'm using the lighter orange along those segment lines that I created. And then I'm using a clean, damp brush to blend that color to soften the edges. So you'll see me put down the color, and then I'm cleaning off my brush, drying it on my paper towel, and running it along the edge of the color that I just put down to soften the lines. And you'll notice as I paint this pumpkin that I am keeping the center area of the pumpkin lighter than the top and the bottom, because I want that to be my highlighted area. So you'll see that I'm adding color to the bottom and to the top and blending it out, but I'm making sure that I keep that center portion of the pumpkin a little bit lighter than the rest. Now I'm just adding a little bit of the darker orange mixed with the brown over those lines again, so that I have a little bit more definition in the segments. And then again, using a clean damp brush to soften those lines and blend the color into the segment. You can see here this brown, this was too much brown, but it didn't ruin the painting. All I did was clean the brush and run it across that line, and I picked up the color. And you can see here I'm adding a darker shade at the base of the pumpkin to create the shadow. And again, I'll be adding some to the top portion of the pumpkin for the cast shadow. Now you can see here that I've picked up a little bit of that deeper, brighter orange, and I'm just running it across the paper, which is nearly dry. And I'm creating a little bit of texture on my pumpkin because I'm not blending some of those lines or some of those brush strokes in. So you can see how they stand out and they add a little bit of texture and depth to the pumpkin. And now I'm going to work on the top pumpkin while the bottom one dries. And you can see I've mixed a little bit of a creamy beigey color. I'm going to make the top one more of a gourd. And now I'm taking a little bit of that darker green that I mixed with the purple, and I'm adding it to the bottom, and I'm just using the tip of the brush to swipe across the pumpkin surface, and I'm making sure that as I put these lines in with the green and the orange that I am following the shape of the pumpkin. And now that I've got my colors in, I'm using a clean damp brush to soften the edges of those lines a little bit, as you see me doing here. And in some areas I'll be blending some of that color into the beige that I put down before. And now to add a little bit of texture, I'm using that deeper green, and I'm using the tip of my brush, and I'm just dotting in the color to create a little texture. And now for the stem, I'm going to mix a dark shade of brown, and I'm going to use the tip of the brush to create these marks, but I'm going to, for the stem, but I'm going to leave some white space because I want it to look as though it's kind of twisted. And then once it's dry, I'll go back and add a little bit of green in there. So here I am painting the center pumpkin, and I want this one to be a brighter shade of orange. So you can see I'm filling it in with that brighter orange and making sure that the color is nicely blended on the paper. And now I'm using that very dark brown to create the cast shadow and the top section of the segments of the pumpkin. So the paper is still a little damp, so you can see that the brown is kind of blooming, and that's exactly what I wanted it to do, because once it's drier I will deepen that brown a little bit and define those segments a little bit more. So you can see here I'm adding even more orange, a deeper shade of orange to the pumpkin. And while I wait for that to dry a little bit, I'm using a little bit of that brighter orange to create a little bit of texture on the bottom pumpkin, which is now dry. So I'm using wet paint on dry paper, and I'm not blending these brush strokes in. I'm just leaving them as they are, and it creates a really nice texture on the pumpkin. So now that the center pumpkin is a little bit more dry, you can see I'm using that darker shade of brown to define those segments towards the top of the pumpkin a little bit more. And you can see I'm pulling some very thin lines using the tip of my brush down the pumpkin to define those segments. But I'm keeping it darker and the lines a little bit thicker toward the top. So you can see here that I'm adding that lighter yellowy orange because I want to create some highlights on this pumpkin as well. So I will be lifting some of the paint that I put down before and adding that brighter yellowish color to create some highlights. And to lift the color, all you have to do is what you see me doing here, using a clean damp brush, run it across the area. And if you're having trouble lifting color, you can always use a paper towel to dab over it once you've run your clean damp brush over the area. But you can see that these colors are lifting very easily for me. So once I've lifted the color, I'm adding that brighter yellow to create highlights. So here I'm adding a little bit more detail. The paper is just about dry. And I'm adding a little bit of the darker orange at the top and the bottom sections of this pumpkin and leaving the center section, as I did with the one below, a little bit lighter because I want that to be my highlighted area. And now I'm just adding a little finishing touches here and there, adding a little more color and definition where I think I need it. I hope that you've enjoyed watching me paint these pumpkins and that you give this a try. If you do, I would love to see how you do. You can always share your paintings or any techniques learned on this channel on our Facebook group, Vivo Vintage Designs. I created that group so that my followers here on YouTube would have a place to share their versions of the paintings and techniques learned on this channel. I am very active in the group, so if you need some feedback or you have some questions, you need some advice, you can always post your version of the painting and ask your question. I'll get back to you right away because, again, I'm very active in the group. We also have a lovely group of members that are very supportive and will definitely boost your confidence. So I do hope to see you there. And don't forget to check the description box if you would like more information about the products used. All the products are linked in the description box. And if you've enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, or consider subscribing. I post videos once a week, and they are either alcohol ink or watercolor. Now that my painting is complete, I am using an eraser to clean up any lines that I may have missed. And I'm using a fine liner and a size 0.2 to draw some sketchy little lines just to create a little bit more definition around the edge of the pumpkins. So very lightly I'm going over the edges of my pumpkin, or the outline of my pumpkin, and just creating a little bit more interest, a little bit more definition. Of course you can skip this part, but I just like the way that the lines look and the definition. Alright everyone, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!